Hi, Savio. Mute.
There we go.
Eccoci qua.
Let me introduce you to my wife, Amy.
Ciao.
Ciao, nice to meet you.
Too. Okay. Well, no one's here yet.
How are things? Good?
Yeah.
There.
Fa caldo anche lì?
Sì, dai, ha cominciato.
Noi anche abbiamo una settimana
eh,
abbastanza da ieri, un po' caldina, però diciamo che abbiamo avuto una bella grandinata in giro, per fortuna ci siamo salvati, quindi ci è
eh.
passata molto vicino, ma ha fatto dei bei disastri.
Ah,
Tra
sì?
l'Aquero
Eh.
scorso, ho fatto però via una zona enorme, proprio in 10 minuti, 20 minuti via. E noi per fortuna l'abbiamo vista da lontano. Questo giro ci è andata bene.
Eh,
Perché purtroppo sei sotto il cielo.
sì. Sì, non sai mai cosa viene.
Hi, Grant.
Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Doing fine. I'll be the only one here. We've got grandkids joining us today, so
Okay. So Connie has the bottle of wine and you're
yeah, that's right. Their parents are moving into an apartment while they reconstruct their house, and so we're letting them. We're having the kids a lot, the grandkids.
Yeah.
So nice.
Grant, let me introduce you to Savio. And Savio, let me introduce you to Grant.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Love your
Love
wines.
to meeting. So we are talking about some wines today.
Good. It's one of my favorite subjects.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you.
We might just give it a couple more minutes. Hopefully others join. And if not, we'll have a great conversation with Grant.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. There's Brian. Hi, Brian.
Hi, sorry, just trying to get my iPad to work. How are you guys?
Great.
Hi, Brian.
Thanks for joining.
Hello, hello. It actually worked out well for us that it got canceled a week or so ago. We were up in Alaska with very little reception, so it was very good.
Oh, there you go.
Well, good. How was Alaska?
Kind of cold and wet, beautiful, very scenic, but a little bit cold and wet and maybe a little too much like Seattle for our liking.
We're just going to maybe wait another minute or so to see if others join.
Perfect.
Do you both have a glass of wine or not?
We actually are going to drink it later today. We've got a little bit of an athletic event to attend, so we're going to try to stay nice and frisky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, since we are recording and then we'll post it to the wine club or on the website, I think for our kind of 40-45 minutes timeline, we'd love to kind of get started. And the last month we feature Strette winery, and here we have Savio, the owner, the winemaker, and it is really something that goes beyond, for me, I mean, my passion for Barolo, my really devotion to Nebbiolo, and the appreciation of a grape that not only defines Italy like no other, but it also has a unique way of describing a territory, describing a piece of land, and the origin where it come from, like no other grape. In fact, I am a big believer that when I say that Nebbiolo is one of those only few grapes out of Italy that you cannot take out of Piemonte. Yes, you can grow some Nebbiolo in some other areas, but like it does not give its best. So it's a pleasure to have Savio here with us today. And I want to start it off, Savio, by just even start asking you, like, how did you get started in this wine, and how did you get here?
Yes, as you said, Marco, first of all, hello to everybody, and sorry for my English, it's not perfect, but I'm sure that Marco can help me if I need. Anyway, as Marco said, Nebbiolo is something that describes the Langhe area, basically, or Piedmont, all over the Piedmont, but basically Langhe and Roero area, where I was born. Me with my brother, we were born in Alba, and so for us, vineyards and vines have been our background, our passion, the passion of my father, of our family. And Strette is our small estate that we founded in '97, and we are two oenologists, and our history is from the family that worked for generation in vineyard. Unfortunately, without having property of this vineyard, my family was a classical growers family that took care of a farm, a different farm. The last one near the town of Alba, where my grandfather moved in 1947, is the farm where my father remained, where there was a big part of vineyard that was also the passion of my father, where me and my brother born. And from that small part of vineyard, we had this passion for our job that became, and we became enologists in the 80 years, and in the enological school in Alba, and then in Torino. And we worked as enologists because that part of vineyard has been reduced little by little in the time, and my father had not the opportunity to buy them. But from that, we had this great passion, so we started to work as enologists without forgetting this passion of the family to have one day our own project. And we are at Strette in Novello because I met my wife in the end of the 80s at the enological school in Alba. Her family, basically her mother, is original from Novello. And this is the reason that we arrived in Novello at Strette, where they had an historical house in the past, also some vineyard. Now remains just the house. And at the beginning of the 90s, with my family, with the family of my wife, decided to restore the small cellar that remained. And as a challenge, we decided to spend time to work on Novello area. And it's been, at the beginning, a combination, something that was not provided to arrive in Novello, but at the end has been a great goal for us, because Novello is one of the 11 villages in the Barolo area. It is also one of the most important, if we consider the surface planted with the Nebbiolo for Barolo, it is the 5th. And it offered us some opportunities, starting from the fact that in that period, we talk about 25, 30 years ago, it was a village less known compared with the other 4 or 5 villages most famous of the Barolo area, such as Barolo or Monforte or La Morra, where also in that period we started the lovers, the Barolo lovers and Nebbiolo lovers had a great attention. The reason was only that the Novello has this great part of vineyard, but the best part of the grape produced in that period were vinified outside of the cellar, and then talking about Nebbiolo, they were used basically for the production of what is known as the classical Barolo, mixing the grape of different areas, different years, different crews in the area of the Barolo, and so without specifying the provenance. And this has been our main idea of work. Our passion led to believe in the territory of Novello and try to a small production that started in '97 with 3,500 bottles, trying to bring in our bottles in the production of our vineyard the idea, notes that represents not only the Nebbiolo, but the Nebbiolo and the Barbera, obviously the other red, Barbera and Dolcetto, of that particular vineyard, starting to give a small contribution to discover what is the characteristic of the Novello production. And in this sense, the variety that we have helped us, because starting from Dolcetto and the Barbera grape, but basically from the Nebbiolo, we had the opportunity to express, and we moved in order to express in our wine what is really the personality coming from the vineyard. So we worked in this direction, starting to produce some crews of the Barolo in Novello area, two in particular, Bergera Pezzole from one side and Corini Palaretta from the other, and adding a third one, in this case originated by the village of Barolo, so the Bergesa, and also working on the other red with a Barbera d'Alba Superiore from old vineyard that we maintained and restored, and Dolcetto d'Alba with a small production. On the other side, Novello offered us also another opportunity perfectly in line with this idea of territory that Nebbiolo describes very well, but that is also a character of another variety. In this case, we are talking about a white variety, and it's not so frequent in our area, but a variety named Nascetta that was historically planted in Novello, but almost disappeared. And so our line of work is starting from the '97, that has been the first year where we started to produce with the small production of 3,000 bottles, 3,500 bottles. Nascetta was a side of the red in this idea of expression of the terroir in Novello area. And Nebbiolo, of course, as Marco said before, give us a great opportunity to make this work on the terroir, because you know, Langhe and Novello area works basically on the red variety, the three typical red, Nebbiolo, Dolcetto, and Barbera, and we can consider Dolcetto as the most describing of this area. Starting from an idea that I consider a defect of the Nebbiolo, and the unicity of the Nebbiolo arrives from a defect. Defect that means that a difficulty to adapt the Nebbiolo everywhere. It means that the Nebbiolo has to find when the perfect condition for growing up in order to express itself. And this is the reason that Marco said that it's not easy to find, to take off Nebbiolo from Piemonte. And the reason is this: it needs particular condition. And so from this defect, these difficulties to be adapted in a different climate, becomes, when the Nebbiolo finds a perfect climate, becomes a richness, because small changes in terms of highness, exposure, soil, means new wines, also with the small distances. And our three crew of Barolo are what we exactly want to express in this sense. So each one has to be done in the same way, in order to, if we find differences in the bottle, in order to be sure that these differences are originated just but by changing the condition and the climate of where this Nebbiolo grows up. And so this is our philosophy, try to express in our wine what is really the personality of each wine, each vineyard, each soil, in the red, and also with the Nascetta, that I consider a white Nebbiolo in this sense.
Thank you. I know we're here and we're talking about wines, but like I just want to do a little bit of a background, because between you and your brother have so much experience, so much knowledge, so much education on wine, on enology, and it is very, very impressive. And so can you share that a little bit, and also, like you talked about what you want your wine to express, but what is your biggest challenge today in making wine?
Unfortunately, as you might know, my brother passed 2 years ago, and so I'm alone on, not alone because I have the family, but in this idea, this philosophy, trying to maintain this one. And as you said, it's important. Our background is long, and all our life has been shared together in the passion of wine. The philosophy and the challenge that every year with Mauro, but also alone, we are trying to put in our wine is that in reality, every year there is something to learn, something to understand, because every year is a different history. Every year is a new challenge in each variety, the Biolo first, but also with Barbera, with Dolcetto, with the Nascetta. And so what is really important for us is trying to express every year the best characters of each vineyard, and so starting with the pruning in the winter, arriving to the harvest, every day try to be in direct contact with our vineyards in order to understand how to move small things, small adapting for the climate, but basically for arriving to respect what is the character in each vintages of variety, vineyard, and climate of this particular condition. And so, and this is something that is huge, and believe me, it means also something that says you have no, every year you have no fixed things. Every year you have to make decision in the base of your experience, but not knowing exactly if your decision will be the most correct that you can take. But this is on the other side the great aspect of this work, of being in direct contact with the nature every year, every day. And so what we are trying and what we wanted to do in each wine is a great expression of vintage and variety, great varieties and vineyards.
Awesome. So let's talk about one of the wine that we featured, and it's your Barbera. So tell us your secret. Tell us really, like, I am not a fan of saying like, well, one wine is good, one wine is bad. Like, it's very personal. But when I drink your Barbera, there is something different. So can you just give us a little bit about, because it's a grape also that is kind of mass produced. Barbera is everywhere. Barbera is easier to grow everywhere. I mean, it's a very different grape than Nebbiolo, but give us a little bit of an insight on your Barbera, because there is something different.
I think that the main secret for the Barbera is something like craziness for me and my brother. And I explain this because basically it's the vineyard. It's the vineyard and the environment. Our Barbera is produced for 70% from a really old vineyard. That it represents also one of the two vineyards, three vineyards in Bergera Pezzole, Dolcetto, Barbera, and a small quantity of Nebbiolo, from where we started our experience in Novello. And I say craziness because it's a vineyard that obviously planted in 1940, difficult to manage every year because the plants are not perfectly planted, the distances, so not easy to manage with any machine. We have to do a lot of by hand. In plus, it's a vineyard that if we displant and replant with Nebbiolo, we could produce the Barolo Bergera Pezzole because it's exactly in the heart of the Cru Bergera Pezzole. But seeing every year how this vineyard produces the clusters is something like a miracle. And at the end, what we do is try to manage the vineyard with the correct production. We have a vineyard that gives us a good quantity every year. Also, if we consider the 1940 planting, but the reason is that the plants are really near to each other, and so the production for each plant is reduced. In plus, we work in Novello, that is average is 420 meters of highness. The soil is a classical Barolo soil, limestone, and is the soil of the Bergera Pezzola, limestone mixed in a limestone based on a structure that is mixed between sand and clayey structure, so a complex soil. In this way, we can have from this general balance what we consider in the Barbera the perfect meeting between one of the aspects of the Barbera, that is the acidity, and the other, that is the fruiting and the smell, but also the body. It means, as Marco said, Barbera can be considered the most diffused between the three red varieties. We can consider the most diffused, most planted in the southern Piedmont. In Piedmont in general, because Dolcetto is more reduced, and also Nebbiolo is also a smaller area. It means that it's easier to adapt. It remains a difficult variety, but easier between Dolcetto compared with Nebbiolo and Dolcetto, easier to plant. At least easier to produce grape. But due to the fact that it produces a lot of grape and it has this base, genetically a good acidity, if it is not managed in the right way, you can obtain really what was the difficult Barbera of the past, where acidity, not so much structure, so wine that really were difficult to sometimes to drink. On the other side, when it finds the perfect equilibrium of planting, like we have in Bergera Pezzola, you have the possibility to have older vineyard. You reduce the production and you maintain a good equilibrium in the quantity of production. This acidity remains, but is integrated in a structure. And so the two areas, the two faces of the Barbera can be expressed together in an equilibrium that every year is not the same, but we can identify two different aspects of two different idea of vintages. The one that has this balance, acidity and structure, more oriented to the acidity, but due to the old vineyards, small clusters, low production, and we can have an important structure that combines with the acidity and make this acidity not aggressive. On the other side, we have vintages like 17, like 15, or the last one, 21, with a huge structure, high alcohol, and the way the wine without a good acidity remain difficult to drink, but due to the highness, we can maintain freshness in the wine. And so in that case, the acidity help us to balance the structure. And so what we do every year is this, to find this perfect equilibrium in order to express the vintages. Fortunately, Barbera offers to us a good quantity of color, not so much tannins. And so the choice to make a wine that has a good possibility to age in the time, without also if it has not a huge quantity of tannins, but due to this structure, perfect for an aging of, normally we use 12, 14 months in wood, and the wood help us not to typicize the wine with oaky taste or sensation of barrique, but just for make perfect this meeting between freshness and structure and alcoholic aspect in the mouth, and also for open and develop the aroma. And this is what we try every year to do.
Yeah. Any you guys have any questions about so far or about the Barbera before we go to a couple of questions on the Barolo?
No questions, but it's the best Barbera I've ever drunk. I really love it. We got 2 cases and we're working our way through them.
The vintage is 19, maybe?
Yes, 19.
It's a great vintage. Freshness and body. So it's a wine that I don't say you drink just after 15 years, because it's better if you drink before and you rebuy another case. but it's a wine that can resist in this evolution because of this aspect, all this aspect. And generally, the Barbera has this, that is in this group, Bergera Pezzola has these characters, and so is. And at the end, I say thank you for this appreciation, because for us, when are the wine that talk about us, it means that our work has been successful.
So let's talk a little bit about the king, the Bergera Pezzole, and I have learned in so many years in the wine business that nowadays, if the critics say that it was a bad vintage, for me is one of the most amazing vintage, and it's happened so many times that critics write scores because of quantities and because to make them look good, and lesser vintages with lesser quality or quantities are just not being talked about. And for me, one of the example is 2017, your Barolo. Like it is something that it's a wine that the first time that I had it, it just stops time. It makes you think, it gives you passion. It's not your regular glass of wine. And so I'm a big fan of the 17 Bergera Pezzole. I'm a big fan of the Bergera Pezzole, as you know. And so can you tell us a little bit about, like, number one, the Bergera Pezzole vineyard, and really like we're going into a little bit talking about the differences between the plots and the commune in Barolo, but like what do you drink out of Bergera Pezzole that you don't drink from other crus, and give us a little bit of an insight on really like your philosophy of making Barolo that I know is very unique to you and to your brother.
Yes, in reality, Bergera Pezzole has been our first challenge with the Barolo in Novello for a case, because when we decided to start this adventure in Novello is because from one side there was the family of my wife that had this small wholesaler in Strette, and also relatives of my wife had some vineyard, 1 hectare, whole vineyards in Bergera Pezzole. They were looking for something that took care of this vineyard because they had this vineyard from the family, but they made another job. And so they gave this vineyard to be followed by the neighbor that was a classical farmer. And this man started to become quite old. He wanted to reduce a little the quantity of work because he had a good part of his own vineyard. And so they were looking for someone else that can substitute. And knowing that we were oenologists, our family had passion in vineyard, and so they asked it to us if we know someone that could take care of this vineyard. And so me and my brother see each other and say, if the family in that period, I had my father still alive and my mother that could help, my father-in-law that now is 80 years old, that helped us for all this process. So we combined all the 3 young people with us, the 3 guys, and say, if you help us, we can take care of this vineyard, restoring the old vineyard of Barbera and the part of Dolcetto, and also starting with the first planted Bergera Pezzole Nebbiolo that was still there, more or less was 2,000 square meters, and we added another plot that was displanted, and we started to replant. So for this case, we arrived to produce there, but right away, vinifying what was planted, so the first part of Bergera Pezzole Nebbiolo and the old vineyards of Barbera and the Dolcetto, right away we had this sensation. It's a terroir that has a great richness. And little by little, we started to get in touch with this particularity. Imagine that is a cru that now is completely replanted. It's not easy to show a photo, but completely replanted in the vineyard. When we started in 97, that cru was planted for the 60–70%, and then the 30% had been displanted. Crazy to say now, but what happened was that 50 years ago, when the Nebbiolo grape in the Langhe area was important for the Barolo, but in numbers of bottles, the Barolo had not a great market. Many times the grower preferred to maintain Dolcetto and Barbera, and when they became old and needed to reduce the part of the vineyard, if they didn't have the opportunity to pass the vineyard to the son, now that doesn't happen, but in the past, 50 years ago, the son preferred to go to work outside. They displanted vineyard and displanted some cases Nebbiolo that was more difficult to manage, higher, and so and the market normally required more Dolcetto and Barbera instead of the Nebbiolo. And so we founded this aside of the planted vineyard, we founded that half hectare that needed to be replanted of Nebbiolo displanted in around 55, 60. Starting from this consideration, we started to see that the character of the soil, the character of also the Barbera and the Dolcetto and the first plot of Nebbiolo that we had were particular due to the complexity of the soil that was a limestone, a classical limestone soil, but with a mixed character. So moving for a few meters in the plot in the vineyard, you can find area that here are more based in a limestone, in a clayey soil, so a little more compact, aside of a soil that is based on a sandy aspect, so a little more soft. And mixing all this character comes out really what is the soul of the Bergera Pezzole. In fact, we manage three different crews. All of them have their personality. Two of them, Bergera Pezzole and Corini Pallaretta, are in Novello. Imagine that between Bergera Pezzole and Corini Pallaretta, there is not more than 300 meters to attach the hill, separated by a rock. 300 meters of distance between each other, but completely different planets. And the character of the Bergera Pezzole is having this mix that in the wine give us a great message of complexity, both in the smell, where you have a wine that shows also when it is younger, shows characters that are more oriented to the spicy taste, the sweet spicy like cinnamon, balsamic aspects. And then also obviously proceeding with the aging, they reach more and more complexity. In the mouth, it has a character that I consider unique for several aspects, based on a structure of important tannins, a texture of important tannins, but also with a good fatness that arrives from the skin, fatness of, technically we say proteins taste. I really use many times with my customer an expression that I have to say thanks to Marco when tasted this Barolo for the first time. And I say in Italian and Marco will translate. He said, he defined this wine as, in the mouth basically, as un pugno di ferro in un guanto di velluto. And the reason is that because when you put the wine in the mouth, the first taste is quite a sweetness that makes the wine. To imagine the wine quite ready. In reality, a few seconds and the tannins comes out. And so say what means guanto di ferro in pugno di velluto.
Yeah, no, like the first time that I tasted, like we were talking and I was just going through my emotions and I said like, well, this wine is really like
Pugno di ferro in guanto di velluto, yeah.
Yeah, like an iron like fist, like an iron punch, in cover by a very soft, velvety, silky cover. And the combination between the two was like, it is just amazing.
And so this is, I think, really describes what is the main character of the Bergera Pezzole. Of course, as Nebbiolo does, every year is a different history. So we have vintages that are more where this structure, this body is really important. Other vintages more oriented to the freshness, to the elegance. But what is important regarding 17, and I say 17 is not an easy vintage, not because we had rain or difficult condition of ripeness. At the opposite, it's a warm vintage. And warm vintages are not every time so easy because the problem is to manage the balance in the wine, because it's easy to arrive to alcoholic percent really high quantity of alcohol, really important also extraction. But what you have to maintain is the freshness. And 17 have been a vintage where we had high temperatures. Novello helped us in this sense because normally we have a little more important differences between day and night temperatures, more expressed in other area of the Barolo, that are, for example, Barolo or other villages, Castiglione, where they are a little lower. And so this difference between day and night temperature is really important for the Barolo. So we can manage and we can maintain, also in 17, where this huge in extraction, this huge concentration, alcoholic aspects that are really important, but with a good freshness. And I consider the character, the goal of this wine that can be important, quite easy to drink now, but with a long future for the aging.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, any questions so far? I know we kind of like are wrapping up, and there are, this is just a little surface of what this winery and what Savio really has to offer to the wine business. I know we're gonna do a Nascetta masterclass. Most likely in the future we can record it. Really, Savio and his brother are in the forefront, have been in the forefront of really what Nascetta is today. Without them, they would probably be no Nascetta. But for the sake of really what we're doing today, if there are no any questions, I really appreciate your time. And you know that every time we get together, I keep pushing you with I don't go easy on you. You have done a lot, but I know there is still a lot that can be done. And I'm a big fan of your wines and the area that you grow them.
I'm glad, and I say, first of all, thanks to you, Marco, for believing in our wines, because what we need in reality for our state is to find someone that believes in, because we know we cannot produce wine that can be appreciated by everybody, the wine that can be easy to, we have to express the terroir. When you express the terroir, is normal that your wine has a personality. And so we really need someone that, like us, believe in that wine. Of course, we try to do our best for produce wine that are also good to drink, of course. But anyway, I say really thank you to you, Marco, for starting with us this project 4 years ago, before COVID, when we started our first, and unfortunately we had to stop for 1 year, but we restarted well. And for us, really is important to find people like you, and I imagine for most of your customers that are interested in drinking wine that are the expression of a philosophy, not the wine that you can find every day, but wine that has behind a history and a soul and a heart and hard work every year. And so thank you to you in premise, to your activity, your staff, and to all are with us trying to develop this philosophy of wine.
Yeah, thank you. You have any question, Amy?
No, any last question, Brian or Grant?
Have you found changing climate in Piemonte that you've had to make some differences in how you do your work?
Of course, we are notice this changing. It's not more or less 15 years that it starts. I consider really the 1995, the real vintage, where we turn our philosophy in the Langhe area, but in the Piedmont area. In fact, if you go back before 95, talking about Nebbiolo vintages and Barolo, Barbaresco, Nebbiolo grape in general, normally we had every 10 vintages, 2-3 important, really important vintages, 2-3-4 medium quality vintages, but also some vintages that were really bad and difficult to manage because the ripeness was not perfect. So fresh vintages. After 95, all these little by little changed. And so we can have a series of important vintages, not produced before in our history, not only in Strette, but in general in the history of Piedmont, in the Barolo area, Barbaresco area. And the climate change may be a part of this, of course, aside of more knowledge regarding our variety, more attention in vineyards, something increasing, a changing of generation. My father, and I consider my father one of